Advanced Medic Theorycrafting, Heal Order, Rotation, and Baiting. This video explains the very complex art of heal order, rotation, and baiting, and to do that, I'm going to use an example from one of the most popular video games in the world, the World of Warcraft. World of Warcraft has been enjoyed by over 100 million players worldwide, but in case you haven't played this game yet, I'll break it down for you. The classes break down into 4 groups: tanks, melee DPS, ranged DPS, and healers, and each group has a specific role. When you're fighting a huge boss like Illidan's Stormrage, the tank's job is to distract the boss. He doesn't do a lot of damage, but he has a ton of health and has a lot of abilities that keep the boss's attention on him. The melee DPS's job is to get up close and do damage, but although he has low health, he is safe because the tank is distracting the boss. The ranged DPS has low health as well, but he's far away and can safely damage the boss from a distance. And lastly, the healer's job is to make sure that everyone doesn't die. Now, the healers in World of Warcraft spend most of their time healing the tanks, because if the tanks do a good job of distracting the boss, nobody else will take damage except for the tank, and this setup is pretty much what you'd want to happen when you play TF2. You need to group the TF2 players into 4 different groups as well. You have your tanks, melee DPS, ranged DPS, and healers, or if you're playing Highlander, your setup might look something like this. However, the main difference between World of Warcraft and TF2 are the health pools. A tank in World of Warcraft can take 10 or more hits from the boss before dying. This means that the healers can focus all of their energy on the tanks without issue. But in TF2, the health pools are a lot lower. Pretty much any class can do 100 damage in one shot if they want to, which means that a fully buffed soldier can only take 3 hits before dying. This forces us TF2 players to rotate heals and take turns tanking the incoming damage. The example that I will use to illustrate this point is migrating bird formations, and I'm sure you all know a lot about bird migrations, but I learned pretty much everything I know about TF2 from the movie The Mighty Ducks and their signature move, the Flying V, because ducks fly together. Ducks fly together! Yeah. So anyways, the reason the Flying V works is because of drafting efficiency and aerodynamics. You see, the duck in the front takes the full force of the wind resistance, and the duck behind sits in the slipstream and rests. Then, when the duck in front gets tired, he falls a bit behind and lets someone else take their turn in front. By doing this, each duck can achieve a reduction of drag by up to 65% and can increase their overall flying distance by 70%. You see, this same technique is known as drafting in sports such as NASCAR, cycling, speed skating, skiing, and even swimming. So how does this work in TF2? Well, you need to remember a few key concepts. Number 1. Focus firing is the most efficient way for teams to kill players. If everyone is shooting one target, that target will die faster, and having a 5v1 5 times is more efficient than 5 1v1s. Number 2. Teams need to shoot the threat that is closest to them in order to efficiently focus fire, and I'll explain more about this later. And thirdly, the medics can only heal one person at a time. So if we go back to the ducks example, imagine if you just had your medic healing the guy in front. That would be the most efficient thing to do. So theoretically, if you wanted your team to be able to withstand the maximum amount of damage, you would rotate heals in a way that I'm showing you now. By taking turns tanking damage, you effectively increase the amount of damage that your team is able to withstand. This gets even stronger when you combine this concept with the concept of crit heals, which rewards players for not taking damage. The guy rotating into the damage next can be buffed with crit heals first, doubling or even tripling the healing efficiency of his medic. So if this concept is so simple, why do so many teams screw it up? Let's talk about rule number 1, focus firing. If you jump into a position where you can be focus fired by too many enemies, you'll die before you can tank any amount of damage. This is known by many players as overextending. You need to take smaller, more manageable fights where you can dodge incoming damage or tank sustainably. Rule number 2, shooting what's closest to your team. When I say shoot what's closest to your team, I mean specifically your medic. You see, it's dangerous to allow an enemy to be able to shoot your medic, because if your teammates choose to not shoot the target closest to him, the chain will get broken. In this example, you're doing a great job healing Guy 2, but if Guy 2 and Guy 3 chase enemy 1, you leave your medic open to attack from enemy 2 because now Guy 1 has to fight the 1v1 versus enemy 2. What you should do instead is attack the closest target. Guy 2 and 3 should attack enemy 2 and let enemy 1 stay out of the way. This keeps the chain intact and it allows for better focus fire from the team. Now you might think that this example looks obvious when it's presented in this way, so how can anyone make this mistake? Well, what if I turn the example 90 degrees to the right? It's not uncommon to see lower level players chase the flanking enemy number 1, but that could be a fatal mistake for your medic. Try to keep your team together as much as possible so that the healing becomes easy for the medic and focus fire is easier for your team on the whole. The easiest way to do that is to kill the closest thing to the bulk of your team. Lastly, let's talk about rule number 3, how medics can only heal one person at a time. A lot of people don't like it when their teammates bait them, but baiting gets a bad rap. Baiting actually is one of the best things that you can do in this game because it allows medics to sustain heals on one target. As you can see here in these diagrams, the enemy team shoots at your tank, and the other guys bait because, again, the medic can only heal one target at a time. So this guy tanks, and these guys bait, and then they swap out so that the baiter with the most health comes in and becomes the new tank. And so on until you're left with just one guy left. Again, this is an ideal scenario where you don't lose any players due to excellent heal rotations and baiting. But if we go back to the original situation, you have to realize that the reason baiting works is because the enemy team is trying to focus fire as well. So the guy who's tanking just has to make sure that he doesn't overextend. Otherwise, you get this scenario, and nobody wants that to happen. So that's all I have today for basic medic theory crafting and heal rotations and baiting. I hope that you learned something useful, and if you enjoyed the video, don't forget to subscribe and check out my Twitch stream for more medic gameplay. I'll see you next time.